This story about Iron Man becoming an alcoholic is a criminally underrated piece of art. Many people admire Iron Man for a variety of reasons, including his sarcasm, sense of humor, intelligence, and relatability. Stan Lee intended for the millionaire playboy to be one that everyone despised when he created the Iron Man character. Fans were expected to despise his erratic personality and sarcasm, and his qualities weren't always in accordance with other heroes when he first appeared. Tony Stark, the man in the Iron Man armor, is a fan favorite inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, today, and as any lover of the superhero genre will tell you. However, Iron Man has a long history of dealing with his alcoholism, and while it mainly faded from the comics in the 1970s and 1980s, Tony Stark's issues have never fully gone away. Addiction can cripple even the most physically and emotionally capable people, and superheroes are no exception. In Alex Paknadel's The Death of Doctor Strange, The Avengers #1, readers see the never-ending repercussions of addiction on a person's daily life, with art by Ryan Bodenheim and colors by Rachel Rosenberg. This is not the only place his addiction is portrayed. It is famously shown in David Michelinie, Bob Layton, John Romita Jr., and Carmine Infantino's Demon in Bottle from 1979. Iron Man has a variety of legendary adventures over his long superhero career, with over 50 years of comic book history, and as a co-founding member of the Avengers. This is one of the most pivotal moments in the character's development. Tony Stark would be haunted and informed for years to come by the multi-issue saga, which was even referenced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The MCU often avoids depicting subjects like these because it must be kid-friendly, but the comics have embraced it. Even though today's Iron Man is a totally different figure than the one who first appeared in the late 1970s, Demon in a Bottle remains Stark's defining event. Now, let's take a look back at this timeless tale and others which give us insight into the not-so-great and lovely parts of Iron Man's lavish lifestyle. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. It starts from the Old Man and the Sea Prince and ends in Demon in a Bottle. In the beginning of the story, we see that while Tony loves his work as a Golden Avenger, he has his own worries, a major one of them being that S.H.I.E.L.D. had secretly been buying stocks for his company and were dangerously close to having a controlling percentage. Clearly, Nick Fury didn't care much for their friendship, and we are just a couple of pages in when Tony has his first drink. The action starts right after, as the wing of a passenger airliner, which Tony Stark was traveling in, is struck by a military tank launched through the air. Stark dons the Iron Man suit he keeps in his bag and saves the plane, and pilots it to a safe landing in the ocean. When the Navy ships arrive, soldiers assist the passengers in getting to safety and transport Iron Man to an island base. They claim that Namor threw the tank because he was defending a resident of the island, who the troops were attempting to evict due to the island's use as a toxic waste dumping site, before it's revealed that the soldiers are actually from the Roxxon Oil Corporation, which is secretly occupying the island to mine the vibranium it contains. Iron Man confronts and fights Namor. However, once he figures out their true identity, Iron Man and Namor band up to fight and defeat the soldiers, who flee and set off explosives on the island, destroying it and all evidence of their presence. Up until here, it seems like a regular superhero comic with action, bad guys, and life and death situations. However, this is all going to change as the comic delves into a much darker theme. The troubles are only beginning here, as Iron Man's armor begins to malfunction while flying home, sending him soaring wildly through the sky and crashing into the ground. He regains control and tests the armor in his lab, where he discovers no apparent flaws. When Blizzard, the Melter, and Whiplash arrive at a casino with Bethany Cabe, they attempt to rob the casino's vault. Stark eludes the villains, dons his armor, and battles and defeats them. During the fight, he overhears Blizzard saying that Hammer wants Iron Man to live. Later, Stark receives and accepts a request for Iron Man to attend a public ceremony and meet with a foreign ambassador on behalf of his company, Stark International. They say that once things start going wrong, they usually snowball until it stops, and things get better. And the same happens with our beloved Tony Stark. Iron Man's armor malfunctions again at the ceremony, killing the ambassador with a repulsor blast. Iron Man informs the authorities about the issue, saying that he did not kill the ambassador on purpose. The cops are skeptical, but knowing they can't fight him, they let him go with the condition that Stark turn over his armor for inspection, which he does. Stark's drinking substantially grows throughout this time because nothing seems to be working out for him, even when he really tries to do good. Stark then meets with the Avengers, agreeing to Iron Man's request to temporarily step aside as their leader, and asks Captain America for hand-to-hand combat training, a request that is granted by the super soldier. He then meets with Scott Lang, the second Ant-Man, and begs him to allow him to sneak inside Whiplash's prison to find out more about the guy known as Hammer. Stark takes advantage of the information and travels to Monaco with James Rhodes to conduct an investigation. When Hammer is informed of their presence, he dispatches troops to assault them. They are both knocked out. Stark is taken into custody, while Rhodes is left in the open and arrested by local cops when he awakens. When Tony Stark wakes up, he is accosted by Justin Hammer, who claims responsibility for Iron Man's armor faults. Angry that he had lost a lucrative contract to Stark International, Hammer, with the help of scientists in his payroll, took control of Iron Man's armor and forced him to kill the ambassador in order to smear the company's name. Stark tries to flee Hammer's complex by scaling a wall, but instead finds himself on a massive floating island at sea. When Hammer learns of Stark's escape, he instructs the supervillains he employs to track him down. The supervillains track down Stark, who has dressed up after discovering the confiscated briefcase holding his spare armor. Iron Man fights and overcomes the enemies before pursuing Hammer. Rhodes has persuaded the police of his claim, and police helicopters strike the island. Hammer flees, and Iron Man flies into the air and falls to the ground, causing the island to be damaged and sink. Stark gets home and proceeds to binge drink, yelling at his butler, Edwin Jarvis, in a drunken manner. The next day, Jarvis resigns. The descent into alcoholism is depicted in a beautiful yet tragic manner, where you can't help but feel bad for Iron Man as he keeps resorting to the bottle. Stark is confronted by Beth as he keeps resorting to alcohol as his escape from the various things going wrong around him. There is a scene here where Tony sits at his desk, in his armor, with a few of mostly empty bottles strewn around. He talks to his helmet, confessing that using Iron Man as a scapegoat for his troubles hasn't been fair. He reveals that he's worried about losing Stark International and considers whether he should just keep being Iron Man all the time. To clear his mind, he chooses to fly through his window. On Long Island, he finds himself at the scene of a derailed train. The authorities are concerned that a chlorine-filled tanker car may leak, but Iron Man simply swoops in and snatches it. It slips from his fingers and lands on the ground, where it begins to leak. Tony comes to his flat and prepares to pour himself another drink when Bethany Cabe interrupts him. She tells him a moving story about her past husband, Alex, who had become hooked to narcotics to cope with his stress and fears, which wrecked their relationship and ultimately killed him. Beth acknowledges that when she was younger, she didn't try to understand his fears, but now that she's older, she won't forsake Stark as she did Alex. She warns Stark that he is becoming his own greatest enemy, and that he must open up to his friends and let them help him, or he will continue to drink until he dies. Stark admits to having a drinking problem and accepts Beth's offer to help him quit drinking and cope with withdrawal symptoms. Stark subsequently apologizes to Jarvis, and he agrees to work with him again. He discovers that Jarvis's mother is ill and offers to cover her medical expenses. but he also learns that Jarvis has sold the 2 shares of Stark International stock that prevented S.H.I.E.L.D. from acquiring a controlling interest in the company. Stark emerges from the book positive about the future, having overcome his drinking and determined to reclaim the stocks and keep control of his company. Critics have hailed Demon in a Bottle as the classic Iron Man story, one of the best superhero sagas of the 1970s, and one that continues to inspire Iron Man writers today. The story was nominated for an Eagle Award in 1980 for Best Single Comic Book Story. Michelinie's clever prose, as well as Romita and Layton's very identifiable artwork, was praised. Tony isn't the wisecracking persona we've seen since his movie Triumph, which is interesting. The tone is much darker, and it's evident that he was having trouble. Tony would be relaunched for the 21st century by Warren Ellis and Adi Granov in Extremis, where he enhanced his viewpoint and technological powers. Tony was on the verge of relapsing into alcohol during the Civil War, suffering from the murder of his old companion Happy Hogan, when the Invisible Woman intervened. Tony purposefully relapsed during the Fear Itself crossover, jeopardizing his sobriety in order to get Odin's attention, in order to defeat his brother. Tony remained mainly sober for the next several years after that. Tony has always been troubled by his own personal problems, including his history as a weapons dealer. But even after becoming a superhero, his alcoholism served as a brutal reminder of his underlying shortcomings.
I'll be throwing one of these in with every purchase of 500 million or more.
Stark's portrayal of alcoholism in the MCU. Tony Stark was quickly established as a habitual drinker at the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, indulging in alcoholic beverages in the morning and during business meetings in the 2008 original Iron Man film. By Iron Man 2, the pressures of being a superhero and facing his own impending death due to blood poisoning had led Tony to significantly increase his alcohol consumption, much to the dismay of Pepper Potts and James Rhodes, resulting in an armored brawl between Tony and Rhodes when an inebriated Tony loses control at his birthday party. Tony is seen drinking more responsibly in Avengers and Age of Ultron before seemingly giving up drinking entirely. Tony's more defining moments in the MCU appear to be rooted in his heroic hubris, as he proclaims himself Iron Man to the world at a press conference in the original film's final scene.
I am Iron Man.
Would inform Tony's life throughout both sequel, as well as his decision to support superhero registration in Captain America: Civil War. The remark would be repeated as his final words prior to wielding the fully powered Infinity Gauntlet to destroy Thanos and his army at the cost of his own life in Avengers Endgame, his final chronological appearance. Thus, this comic receives bonus marks for introducing the concept of alcoholism. In any case, this is a must-read for Iron Man fans, since it depicts a critical period in the character's history, one that has continued to reappear and or play out in both the comics and the movies. Tony's drunkenness has become a defining point in his development as a character. It's nice to see the character conquer it, but everything was wrapped up a little too cleanly and simply, and, as I noted, there wasn't a consistent progression that made his descent into alcoholism a believable or worthwhile storyline. As has been seen, the alcoholism storyline has remained a theme in the character portrayal and development of Iron Man, even in the movies. Although it has definitely been toned down in comparison to the comics, even heroes have their own demons. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.